The episode you all have been waiting for. All of the MMA fans out there, the combat sports fans out there, I am here to give you my UFC 247 main event aftermath. Jon Jones, Dominick Reyes diving into the fight, the decision. But first, I have to remind you all to go to the Trainwreck Sports Apple Podcasts and Spotify account and listen to my interview with Baby Joe Macy on the 47-Foot Takeover Show. Last night, Amherst Ale House, great atmosphere. I interviewed Baby Joe Macy with my colleague Kyle Hughes. Awesome show. I got to ask Baby Joe Macy a ton of great questions. Baby Joe Macy, 36-0, 29 knockout victories, rode off into the sunset with an undefeated, unblemished record, 29 knockouts, and the fighting pride of Buffalo, New York. Buffalo's very own Baby Joe Macy. So check that out. You will greatly enjoy it, no doubt about it. But guess what, folks? I am also here today, a very, very conflicted man as far as the results of UFC 247, Jon Jones and Dominick Reyes. I've given myself enough time to really let my mind marinate in the results of the first fight, really let my mind marinate how I viewed the first fight, post-fight and during the fight, and also allowing my mind to then rewatch Jon Jones and Dominick Reyes duke it out, battle it out once again. And folks, I got to tell you, this fight should be talked about, must be discussed, must be looked at deeper and deeper as the years go by, because right here, right now, we have a fight in Jon Jones and Dominick Reyes that we can hold up, put on the mantle, and say that this fight can be viewed as a draw. Now, I'm going to dive into that in a little more detail, obviously. But the reason I say that is based on my opinion while watching this fight. To take you guys through it, I'm at a mutual friend of mine. I'm at his house, and we go to a mutual friend's house and we watch the fights, and it was a fun time watching fights with guys that I hadn't met before. And shout out to Zach Feeney, Lockport grad like myself, good guy, personal trainer. He does a lot of really awesome stuff, and he's a follower of the podcast. He's a big supporter of me, and I really appreciate it. So I wanted to throw him a shout out. While watching the fight, I became completely enamored and just shocked with the performance that Dominick Reyes was dishing out towards Jon Jones. I knew that Dominick Reyes would be a tough fight for Jon Jones, and I knew that this would not be a cakewalk fight. In actuality, dating back to the pre-fight show, which was about a week before the fight, which was this past Saturday, I really thought to myself, Dominick Reyes is going to fight Jon Jones unlike anyone has before. He's going to fight him tooth and nail. He's going to fight him strategically and as poised as one possibly could. And I really thought that. But then to see it at this next level capability was something that I did not really expect. Seeing it is one thing. Believing it and seeing it are two very, very different things. And the first round, Dominick Reyes, really, that first round could not have gone any better for Dominick Reyes. Second round could not have gone any better for Dominick Reyes. Third round, in a 5-minute round, 5 rounds, 5 minutes each, 25-minute fight. But in that round specifically, that round in that 5-minute span was literally dead even. Dead even. I could not go back in my brain and think of who won that round. After watching that fight and then watching it a second time, I am even more confused as to who won that third round. Jon Jones did some things really well in that round to recover after the first two didn't really go so well for him. Dominick Reyes did more of the same, implementing his game plan, but you could start to see as that third round ended, Dominick Reyes was getting tired. You started to see as that fourth round started, Dominick Reyes was easing up on the gas pedal. As that fifth round started, Dominick Reyes had hardly anything left in the tank, which leads me to believe that Jon Jones won rounds 4 and 5. Those were the easy rounds to score. But Dominick Reyes won rounds 1 and 2. And Dominick Reyes did what he needed to do to win that fight. Did Jon Jones do what he needed to do to win the fight? I can't say the same thing. That's a real big question now as we inch closer to what is next for Jones and Reyes. As much as I like these guys, as much as I love the sport, the one thing that I hate within the sport of mixed martial arts is the judging, or lack thereof. 48-47 for Jon Jones is one thing. And that was the scorecard that was read on two judges' scorecards. 48-47 is one thing entirely, but 49-46 for Jon Jones? No. I'm sorry, but no. That is one of the most egregious decisions in recent memory, and it adds to the whole thought that in order to beat Jon Jones, if you're the challenger, you're not going to get the decision over him. But in order to beat Jon Jones, you're going to have to knock him out or submit him. And submitting him is a tall task because he's great on the floor, extremely underrated ground game. He's got a bevy of submission victories and has shown from time to time that his top position is unreal. He's tough to game plan for in that regard. A guy that is long and is as lanky as him, is as fast and agile as he is on the ground. But Jon, in the fact that he needed to fight better within those fourth and fifth rounds, he did that. But your best shot if you're Dominick Reyes to win that fight, to get that decision, is to literally put Jon Jones down cold. Knock him out cold. And that's very hard to do. That is the hardest thing to do in combat sports, is to get the knockouts, which is why when there are fighters like Conor McGregor, like Anderson Silva, you realize how unique these guys are for their ability to be able to knock out their opponent. I just talked about Baby Joe Macy. Baby Joe Macy fought 36 professional boxing fights. He knocked out 29 men. That's a pretty good knockout wins ratio. You knock him out in the first, second, third round, that's even better. Jon Jones hasn't knocked anybody out since Daniel Cormier. Prior to that, he had a few TKO finishes. But Jon Jones was not knocking out Dominick Reyes on that night, February 8th. It was not happening. Not at all. Because Jon Jones could not close the distance with Dominick Reyes. Dominick Reyes, his lateral movement of moving left to right, right to left, trying to keep Jon Jones guessing and changing angles constantly within this fight. As a fighter that probably weighed around 210, 220, that's really difficult. That's extremely, extremely difficult for a fighter to fight like that for a 5-round pace. 3-round pace, we know who would have won this fight. I think Dominick Reyes would have won it on all three judges' scorecards, but championship fights, 5-minute rounds. So Reyes had to dig deep. He had to show up a little bit, and, much to my frustration, this is where I say where I'm a little bit frustrated with Dominick Reyes, and the fact that Dominick Reyes came out and said that he felt like he had that fight on all three judges' scorecards. Now, even if that is true, which it is, Dominick Reyes did have the fight on all three judges' scorecards. Even if that is true, you gotta put your foot on the gas pedal just a little bit. Just a little bit. Just to show the judges that you're still in there. Just to show the judges that you're aware of the situation. When these guys take multiple rounds off, assuming that they've won rounds 1, 2, and 3, you can't assume anything in the sport of mixed martial arts. You can't assume anything in the sport of boxing. And the reason for that is you cannot assume that these judges have any idea as far as what they are talking about. Any idea at all. We're talking about the same judge that scored the fight 49-46 for Jon Jones. That would mean Jon Jones, in that man's eyes, won 4 rounds of this fight. That just didn't happen. I don't even know if Jon Jones won 3 rounds of this fight. Hell, if Dominick Reyes wouldn't have taken a few minutes off, maybe Jones wouldn't have won the 4th. Maybe he wouldn't have won the 5th. Who knows? But last I checked, it was a 5-minute per round, 5-round title fight, 25-minute title fight, and you can't take a round off. You just can't. You can't assume that you got this fight in the bag. You can't assume that what you did was good enough. You just can't. And that's where I am a little bit frustrated with Dominick Reyes. Did Dominick Reyes fight his ass off? 100%. Did Dominick Reyes put in the performance of his life? 100%. Did Dominick Reyes force Jon Jones to change the blueprint of his game for the rematch? Yes, he did. And segueing to the rematch right now, 11 minutes into the show, would be far too soon. But 21 media analysts that get polled on who won this fight and how they won it and all that stuff, 14 of 21 said that Dominick Reyes won the fight. 7 said that Jon Jones won the fight. I'm shocked at 7. And I'm not saying that anybody got robbed here. I will say that this was an extremely close fight, and the skill sets of both fighters match perfectly well with one another. But if you're Dominick Reyes, you got to be kicking yourself. You got to be saying, come on, that was the best fight of my life. I put it on Jon Jones for 3 of the 5 rounds. What is it going to take for someone else to get that belt from Jon Jones, to actually take it from him? Am I the guy to do it? I think I am. Did I prove that I am? I think so. But in the rematch, who's to say that Dominick Reyes can do that again? Who's to say that Dominick Reyes can go out there and repeat the same performance? Oftentimes, the challenger that challenges the champion very well has a very tough time doing that in the next fight. A very tough time doing that in the rematch. But in combat sports, the rematches are the moneymaker. The rematches are what makes the sport tick and what trudges along the cash cow. As much as I love combat sports, and in certain instances, as much as I've hated immediate rematches, boy, you don't have a better case than right here, right now for an immediate rematch with Jon Jones and Dominick Reyes. An immediate rematch is what should happen. Dominick Reyes challenged Jon Jones better than anyone has, and as far as I'm concerned, there is no evidence that anyone else could challenge Jon Jones as well as Dominick Reyes. At the end of the day, it's what it's all about. Champion versus challenger. The challenger should be there to challenge the champion. And the promotion should be willing to put on the most competitive fight possible featuring the champion and the challenger. That's what you have with Jon Bones Jones and Dominick Reyes. The rematch. When will it happen? I don't know. I'm assuming maybe May, June, or July. But I do know this. That rematch would be epic. That rematch elevates the UFC light heavyweight division, which needed a big boost. And if anything, a question that I asked myself and a question that I answered on the Thomas Take Sports podcast in a super quick clip was this. Was the judge's decision with Jon Jones and Dominick Reyes good or bad for the sport of mixed martial arts? And I'm going to say both. And maybe that's a cop-out. Maybe you can say I'm copping out a little bit here. But I mean what I say, and I say what I mean with this. The judging in the sport of MMA, the judging in combat sports in general, whether it's MMA or boxing, has been systemically corrupt for the last almost 100 years. For me to go through the laundry list of fighters and the laundry list of fights where we've been robbed of the true result, where the fighters have been robbed of victories, it's like that scene in The Mask when Jim Carrey morphs into the banker. 82% stocks and bonds. Carry the fiscal year or whatever. And you see the receipt just printing and printing and printing. That's what it would be like. It would be a long receipt of names that did not get their due. Names that did not get the justification that they deserved. Dominick Reyes did not get the justification that he deserved within that performance. Would he have been justified had this fight been ruled a draw? 100%. Because with a draw, you are literally signing your name on the bottom line already before the ink is even dry. Before the ink is even wet. Before you even grab the pen, Dominick Reyes' name would already have been at the bottom of that rematch contract, coming off of a draw where John Jones didn't get a win added onto his record, where John Jones didn't get a loss added onto his record either, and most importantly, where Dominick Reyes didn't get charged with the win or with the loss. In particular, the loss. Meaning to say the loss, I botched it. In particular, Dominick Reyes did not get charged with the loss. There you go. Dominick Reyes did not deserve to have his O go in that fight. And you are literally tainting records of fighters. You are literally tainting the history of mixed martial arts. With this win, John Jones surpassed, for my mind and my money, the greatest MMA fighter of all time and a really important record. Georges St. Pierre had won 13 straight UFC title fights across 2 divisions. And John Jones passed Georges St. Pierre with his 14th straight title fight victory in a row off of this quote-unquote win over Dominick Reyes. Now, I'm not even saying that not only did John Jones not deserve to win this fight, Dominick Reyes didn't deserve to lose it. But did Dominick Reyes deserve to win it? I don't think so either. This fight was literally Reyes wins round 1. Reyes wins round 2. Reyes has 2 minutes and 30 seconds of productivity in the third round. John Jones has 2 minutes and 30 seconds of productivity in the third round. John Jones wins round 4. John Jones wins round 5. Guys, this was as good a case as any in the history of mixed martial arts. And this is super, super important for the future and progression of the sport. And it's a sport that I really love, and it's a sport that I'm very passionate about because I want to see the sport grow and reach new heights. But for the purpose of growing and reaching new heights, this fight was a fight that you could literally put on your mantle as a classic case of a draw. And we were robbed of that. MMA fans were robbed of that because in the history books, 10, 15 years from now, when John Jones fought Dominick Reyes at UFC 247 on February 8th, it will always be referred to as a win for John Jones. And that is not right. But there are a lot of positives to this. There are a ton of positives to this result. And the positives lie within the big business. As I said earlier, I asked myself earlier, was the John Jones-Dominick Reyes fight bad for business with the results? It was bad for the judges. The judges suck. The whole system needs to be re-evaluated. The whole system needs to be reinvigorated. The whole system needs to change. If it doesn't change, we will only continue to see seeds of corruptivity within the sport of mixed martial arts. And we have seen these seeds blossom into flowers, I guess you could say, of corruptivity within the sport of boxing. Do we want MMA to be like boxing? No. Do we want boxing to be like MMA? I almost said M&Ms. Do we want boxing to be like MMA? Hell no. Hell no. As great as these two sports coexist, why would we want them to be like one another? Why does mixed martial arts have a 10-point scoring system? A 10-point scoring system works when you got two weapons, a left hand and a right hand. How that boxer decides to use those hands is boxing. How that boxer decides to defensively outmaneuver his opponent in order to land offense. A great defense is a great offense. That is what can fall within the 10-point scoring system. But beyond that, in mixed martial arts, where this fight could go anywhere, anywhere, with every discipline that you could think of, boxing, wrestling, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, everything, kickboxing. There's so many factors upon scoring the sport of MMA that are just clearly falling by the wayside with some of these judges. Now, the same judge that scored the fight for Jon Jones, the same judge that scored the fight for the gentleman that fought James Krause, the name is not coming to me right now. I'll look it up. But the fact is, we had a real opportunity within the sport to make this situation better, and here we are. It is not better at all. No matter what stage this is on, it is not better at all. Trevin Giles did not win a 30-27 fight over James Krause. Krause had Giles on his back throughout the majority of that first round, and this same judge that scored the fight for Jones scored a 30-27 victory for Giles over Krause. Krause, taking that fight on short notice, fought like an animal, fought like a true champ in there. Hang tough, for short notice. He did as good as he could have done. I just cannot fathom how a judge could score this fight with Jon Jones and Dominick Reyes 49-46. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. Jon Jones got lucky. Jon Jones essentially robbed Dominick Reyes of a victory, and it's not that Jon Jones, was responsible for it. I think the look of a man's face is a tall tale sign. Body language is everything in sports. Body language is everything in general. And the look on Jon Jones's face after the fight was, wow, I think I might have just lost my belt. The look of Jon Jones during the fight was, up until the fourth round, I can't believe this is happening. I got to get going. I got to make something happen. Jon Jones just simply did not look good out there. And the veil of invincibility, I think, is really starting to go away, because you look at even his fight with Daniel Cormier, the second fight, Cormier was winning that fight up until that head kick knockout. And not only that, the fight with Thiago Santos was looked at as a close decision fight. I think he was more of a clear-cut winner in that fight than he was in this one. But the veil of invincibility on Jon Jones is really starting to wear thin. And to the credit of the UFC, to the credit of building the sport, making it as best as it possibly can be, and making the UFC as best as it can possibly be, getting the most talented fighters humanly possible for Jon Jones to fight in the UFC light heavyweight division is all well and great. That bears the next question: what is next for Jon Jones? It really needs to be Dominick Reyes. I don't even care to see him fight at heavyweight. I don't think Stipe is coming back anytime soon. DC's going to have to wait for his trilogy fight, which I think is ridiculous. But Stipe was eye-poked and had an eye injury. And was eye-poked in the first fight, had an eye injury. He ignored it, fights him again, gets poked in the eye a couple more times, and eventually wins that one. But in the midst of me going into what's next for Jon Jones, for Dominick Reyes, I really feel for him, because that was his night. That was his moment. Even if he was the champ for just a few months and Jon Jones got his belt back, it's a lot better than fighting Jon Jones again, and Jon Jones, being the student of the game that he is, reevaluating the tape, checking the data, and finding out how he can implement that data on his opponent. He does it within the fight, but he especially does it before the fight. Either way, it was a great main event. I was very happy to cover it for you. I'm very happy to react to UFC 247's main event, Jon Jones and Dominick Reyes. One of the most controversial decisions in MMA history, no doubt about it. This will be a fight we will talk about for a long, long time. I'm Ryan Thomas. Thank you for tuning in to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. You can find it on Apple and Spotify at the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram at Ryan Thomas Take for random sports stories as well as posts. And you follow me on Twitter at Ryan Thomas Takeover as well. There you have it, folks. I'm all out of energy. Jon Jones, fight Dominick Reyes, for Pete's sake. I think if Jon Jones has anyone smart in his corner, though, he will not. And if Jon Jones doesn't fight Dominick Reyes again in short order and an immediate rematch, he'll be labeled not just somewhat of a cheat by some, but he will be definitely labeled a coward by those within the sport of MMA. Take care, everybody.